Imagine knowing the exact hour of your death, the exact room, the exact blade. Mary, Queen of Scots, knew all three, but what the executioner didn't tell her, what the court records buried, what the official accounts quietly erased, was that it didn't happen cleanly, it didn't happen swiftly, and it didn't happen with any of the dignity a queen deserved. What unfolded inside Fotheringhay Castle on that frozen February morning in 1587 was something far more disturbing than a royal execution. It was a spectacle of failure, fear, and something disturbingly close to cruelty. And the world was never supposed to know exactly how bad it truly was. She was born into royalty before she could even understand what royalty meant. Mary Stuart became Queen of Scotland at just 6 days old, 6 days, when her father, King James V, collapsed and died, reportedly broken by military defeat and personal grief. From her very first breath of conscious life, Mary was already a crown, a symbol, a political weapon in the hands of men far older and far colder than she would ever be. By the time she was a teenager, she was Queen of France too. Educated in the glittering courts of Paris, fluent in 6 languages, celebrated across Europe for her intelligence and beauty. On the surface, her life looked like a fairy tale written by God himself. But Europe's fairy tales have always had teeth. By her mid-20s, everything had collapsed. Her young French husband dead. Her return to Scotland turbulent and unwelcome. 2 more disastrous marriages. One to a man suspected of murder, another to the man who likely committed it. Protestant lords turned against her. Her own people rose in rebellion. And then came the decision that sealed everything. In 1568, Mary fled south across the border into England, not as a conqueror, not as a diplomat, but as a desperate woman seeking refuge from her own kingdom. She was running toward her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, believing family meant safety. She had never been more wrong. Elizabeth imprisoned her, not in a dungeon, but in a gilded, suffocating captivity that would stretch across 19 long, agonizing years. And at the end of those 19 years, Fotheringhay Castle waited, and the axe. 19 years is a long time to wait for a death sentence. For nearly 2 decades, Mary lived in a suspended kind of agony. Technically a guest, functionally a prisoner. Castle after castle, guard after guard, letters intercepted, visitors controlled. Her world was shrinking, season by season, until it was barely larger than the rooms she was permitted to occupy. But Mary never stopped fighting. That was the thing about her that unsettled Elizabeth's advisors most. She wrote letters, hundreds of them, to foreign kings, Catholic powers, anyone who might restore her freedom or her throne. She was a queen without a kingdom, but she still thought like one. That thinking ultimately destroyed her. In 1586, she was drawn into the Babington Plot, a Catholic conspiracy to assassinate Elizabeth and place Mary on the English throne. Whether Mary truly masterminded it, or whether she was manipulated into complicity by Elizabeth's spymaster, Francis Walsingham, historians still debate. But Walsingham had built his trap carefully, patiently, brilliantly. He intercepted every letter. He decoded every cipher. He waited until Mary had written enough to hang herself, and she had. The trial was almost a formality. Mary defended herself with extraordinary composure, denying everything, challenging the court's authority to judge a sovereign queen. It didn't matter. The verdict had been decided before she ever entered the room. Elizabeth signed the death warrant in February 1587. Then, almost immediately, she hesitated, but hesitation this time came too late. The order had already been dispatched. The morning of February 8, 1587, arrived gray, bitter, and unforgiving. Mary dressed a deep crimson gown, the Catholic color of martyrdom. She had chosen it carefully, intentionally. If they were going to take her life, she would control the one thing still left to her, how she met it. She walked into the great hall of Fotheringhay Castle with 300 witnesses watching in silence. No trembling, no tears. Witnesses later recorded that she moved with a composure that made grown men look away in discomfort. Then the executioner raised his axe and missed. The blade struck the back of her head, not her neck. Mary's body lurched. She made no scream, no cry, just a barely audible sound, something between a breath and a moan, that those present never forgot for the rest of their lives. The second blow landed closer, but still not clean. It took a third strike, a third, to finally sever her head. And even then, the executioner reached down to lift it by the hair for the crowd. The hair came away in his hand. It was a wig. Mary's real hair beneath was short, gray, and closely cropped, the hair of an old woman worn down by 2 decades of captivity. The face the crowd saw, tilted toward them, was unrecognizable from every portrait ever painted of her. The executioner stood there, holding a wig in stunned, humiliated silence. And the great hall of Fotheringhay went absolutely still. They cleaned the hall. They removed the body. They burned the crimson dress, the execution block, every object present that day. Elizabeth's advisers, terrified that relics might transform Mary into a Catholic martyr. They were already too late. The story had escaped the castle walls before the blood had dried. Across Catholic Europe, Mary became exactly what her executioners feared most: a symbol, a saint, a queen who died with more dignity than the system that killed her. Elizabeth, by most accounts, you wept when news of the execution reached her. Whether from genuine grief or political calculation, nobody truly knows. She had signed the warrant, she had built the trap, and then she spent the rest of her reign insisting she had never truly wanted it carried out. Mary's son, James, the child she had surrendered years before, the boy she never really knew, eventually inherited Elizabeth's throne after her death. The woman who ordered his mother's execution handed him her kingdom. There is no clean moral in that, no satisfying justice, only the particular cruelty of how history moves, indifferent, uneven, and deeply unkind to those who are born into the wrong story at the wrong moment. Mary, Queen of Scots, didn't lose because she was weak. She lost because the world she lived in had already decided her ending before she ever had a chance to write her own. Some cages, it turns out, are built from the moment you are born, and some people never even see the bars.